at the end where he's just talking one-on-one with Alan Ladd after they've captured Captain Jack.
Wonderful. Yeah, he was a I mean, a really good actor, really into it, and very down to earth.
Did you do any horseback riding in Sedona?
Yes, I've done a lot of horseback riding. That's always, well, I'm no better at it now than I was in the beginning, let me put it like that. I'm not quite as fearful of the horses as I was.
Hi, I'm Rob Word. Welcome to A Word on Westerns, and we are in for a treat today. Everybody out there knows how much I love Delmar Daves and all those great movies that he shot in Sedona. Today, our guest is Audrey Dalton, who worked with Delmar Daves, Alan Ladd, and Charles Bronson in Drumbeat. Audrey, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for being here. You said you were good friends with Charles Bronson. Was Drumbeat the first time you met him?
Yes, yeah, in Sedona, as you said.
He played Captain Jack in that.
Yes.
What was it like in Sedona?
Hot, because it was in the summer when we shot, but vastly different than it is now. You know, now I've been there several times in the last few years, and I can't believe the changes from then, because it really was an outpost then. Nothing there.
Tourist Mecca now.
One motel and a gas station and whatever, and then I think, don't hold me to the name of the camp, but that's where the crew and everybody stayed, and we all had our meals, and we were put up in the little kind of L-shaped motel on the corner, the main actors, and it just was different, and it was warm.
And the crew stayed in tents in camp?
No, that was the name of it. No, it was just, it was rooms, but it was a temporary kind of structure, and that all the film companies stayed there when they were shooting in there. I talked to the people at the museum there several years ago, and they, reiterated a lot of the stuff. And what was fun was knowing the locations that the film was in. They told me what was now the store in front of where, if I got between those buildings, I could see the location where something had been shot, with the river and stuff down.
How are you cast in that?
Alan Ladd, and he had formed a company, Jaguar Productions, and this was one of his productions, one of the first ones, when he came back from England. And he had seen me work. I had met him socially. My father was a friend of his in London. My father had racehorses, and Alan was interested in that. So they started talking to each other. Then I was here, and he introduced me to his daughter, who was about my age, Carol Lee. And out of that came this wonderful role. I had just ended my contract with Paramount. And so this was the first independent thing I had done with a new agent.
He had just come off of Shane.
Yes,
so he was big.
Huge. That was big. That was really big, yes.
And what was Charles Bronson like?
He was very quiet. In those days, it may have changed. And I think I did tell you on another occasion about the name change. He was Charles Buchinsky, and Sue Ladd, who was Alan's agent, and his wife, said, "You can't be in films with a name like that." That was the era where everybody had changed their name. And she picked Bronson because that was where the corner in front of Paramount Studios gate is Bronson Avenue. So he went along with it. He was quiet. He was a nice man. As I said, we became friends later, he and his wife.
Well, he had a wonderful scene, several actually in this film, but at the end where he's just talking one-on-one with Alan Ladd after they've captured Captain Jack.
He was wonderful. Yeah, he was a really good actor, really into it, and very down to earth.
Did you do any horseback riding in Sedona?
Yes, I've done a lot of horseback riding. That's always, I'm no better at it now than I was in the beginning, let me put it like that. I'm not quite as fearful of the horses as I was. I had to learn to get used to that.
Alan Ladd was quite the rider, though, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah. I mean, he had done Shane, of course, and other stuff. but I've learned to rely on the wrangler who is handling the horse, and they made me look good.
With Charles Bronson, you had told me that you got together with him on weekends and had dinner with your families because you had children.
Yes, yes. He had one daughter at the time, and I had I just had one in the beginning, but through the years, I had more. He didn't, and he went on to do other things, and then, of course, his career grew and grew from there. But he was a very nice fellow, very unorthodox at the time. I think he continued along that line.
How
but
so?
I'd run into him on other movies. I worked with, he had a series, that Man with the Camera.
And you did one of those.
And I did one of those, Two Strings of Pearls. And I can't now remember what it was, but I did work with him again.
Well, you had been in a Big Valley that he was in, but you had no scenes together, I don't think.
We were in it, and often we were on the same studio on different back lots working, and we'd visit back and forth. Yeah.
Well, that Big Valley was an interesting one. He was trapped underneath a church in a cave with Barbara Stanwyck and a pregnant Native American girl.
Right.
Who was...
had been taken advantage of.
Knocked up by your husband? Is that what we could say?
Yes, and I became aware. Yes, yes. That was a little different, I think, that sort of attitude.
Well, she was a sympathetic character, I think, the Native American girl in that. And your husband was the bad guy.
Oh, he was a jerk.
Yes.
Absolutely, apart from being unfaithful and so on and so forth.
Now, with roles like that, where you were constantly employed, it seemed like, how would you be cast in that? Would your agent say, here's a...
Oh, the agent, yeah. I had... Phil Gersh was my agent for many years, and from the time I came over. And he did wonderful things, with me and for me. And then later on, I was with contemporary artists. And they've all merged now. One is half of another.
Giant mega agents now.
Yeah. No, it was always through my agent. The exception was, Alan Ladd knew me, and I'm sure that prompted that. And
well, that's a classic. And Delmar Daves is such an icon today, but people don't remember him as much as I wish they would, because he did so many wonderful films. And he was a writer, too, but 3:10 to Yuma, and he loved the location in Sedona. He had done Broken Arrow just
which was
before
big.
this.
Yeah.
Too, so. What was he like?
He was a wonderfully sweet, soft-spoken, down-to-earth, nice man. Very much a family man, just easygoing, low-key, but always got what he wanted. I mean, he was aware of details and so on, but he was pretty laid back. It was very nice to work with, very pleasant.
He loved that location, too, so much.
What's not to love there? It's still beautiful.
It is. Great directors pick areas that they claim as their own, and his was Sedona, and John Ford, of course, was Monument Valley, and that wonderful section near the Four Corners. He took advantage of that and claimed it as his own.
Yeah. Well, there were areas, I know, oftentimes when I was working in town, in Hollywood, in one of the studios, there was a crew getting ready to go on location, and Yuma was another one, Lone Pine, so on. They'd be going off.
Bud Bedecker, that was one of his favorite places, and all the Hopalong Cassidy films shot there.
Okay.
Did you ever work in Lone Pine?
No. No, I've been back for a film festival there, but I never did. And when I was there, just as an aside, they do a part of the festival is a motor car parade and whatever, and a man came up and spoke to me and talked about Titanic, which I had done with Barbara Stanwyck. And he told me that she loved Lone Pine, and her ashes actually were scattered on the Alabama mountains there.
Wow.
And that was such a surprise. And his eyes sort of teared up as he told me he had been a real fan of hers.
Wow. Well, I know in Titanic, with Clifton Webb and R.J. Wagner, you and R.J. were the item in that.
Yes.
But I think in real life, he and Barbara Stanwyck.
Yes, I heard that many years later.
Yes.
Yes.
You know,
and here I was thinking, well, we had one date, but, he was, it would have been nice. I kept thinking, really? Just one date? What did I do wrong? But anyway, yes, of course, he was involved with Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah, that's a terrific movie.
when I was on a contract, I did 2 pictures at Paramount, Girls of Pleasure Island and Casanova's Big Night with Bob Hope. But they loaned me out to Fox for my cousin Rachel and Titanic.
With your version of Titanic, which was a big hit at the time, how do you compare that with this monster hit of the more recent one?
I saw it, and it was wonderful. You know, and I tried not to be prejudiced, but I couldn't. I didn't succeed. Yeah. But it was wonderful in a different way, I found the one we did was more moving. And some of the fictional characters, the way they were played in the version that I did in 52, sort of were the same, reiterated again in the other one.
And if you try to interfere, I'll be as common as you think I am. I'll fight you tooth and nail. I'll take you to the courts.
No court in the world, no power under heaven can force me to give up my son.
He is not your son.
With Barbara Stanwyck as your mother, did you learn anything from her?
Are you kidding? She was the ultimate pro. She was wonderful. You could just to watch her work, and she was funny too. She had a great sense of humor, and she was very helpful to me in many different scenes, working with that. And one of the funny things she did, which at the time I didn't realize, we had a scene in the dining room where we're getting up that glorious set, and we're getting up and walking away, and I was kind of plump then, more than I am now, and I know there was a little conference with the director and the cameraman about my view from the rear, and in walking away from the table, that when we shot it again, she draped her arm with her stole kind of around my waist, which sort of took care of the problem.
That's great.
But
That's
kindness,
great.
yes.
Well, everybody loved working with her.
And everyone knew her, and she knew everyone, you know, up at doing the lights in the old days with the arc lights. She knew them all.
Wow. Well, she was
Missy.
a pro.
Yeah, was what they called her, yeah.
Let's talk about Wagon Train, because you worked in 5 or 6 of those with different wagon masters, too. I know Ward Bond did several. You were with John McIntire.
Yeah, too.
The guest stars were amazing. And sometimes you had an Irish accent, and other times not.
Yes. Well, I probably, my accent was leaving me a bit by the time then, because I had a very good ear. And of course, when I came, I had to Hollywood, to America. I had an English accent because I'd been living in London for a couple of years, but I obviously could revert back to the Irish with no problem at all. And so the one character was, yeah.
When you came and were under contract, did they put you in classes to help you get an American accent? How did that come about? Who taught you?
No one did. It just happened. Like I said, I have an ear, and I pick up wherever I am an accent. I mean, I can very easily. So that's what happened. And if I'm down in the South for a while, but it took a while. And when I was doing my training in London at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, I, of course, had come from Dublin, and I had an Irish accent. And the comment there from the diction teacher was, well, if you want to play maids all the rest of your life. And in those days, there was a lot of typecasting, and I don't have to remind you of that.
Didn't want to be pigeonholed.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you certainly weren't, because you had a variety of roles just on Wagon Train alone. One of them with Robert Loggia.
Oh, yes.
Had been tied up to be killed by Native Americans, and they find him and bring him into camp, and you befriended him. What a terrific actor he was.
Oh, wasn't he? Yes. And I worked with him again in, and it was a Disney production.
The El Fuego Baca?
El Fuego Baca, yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
That was wonderful. From a woman's point of view, the clothes were fantastic. It was wonderful, and the story was romantic, and he was such fun to play with and against. You know, we bounced off each other.
The 9 Lives of El Fuego Baca.
Right.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Did they shoot that at Disney's back lot?
I can't remember. I can't remember. It was shot in the studio.
After Disney's success with Davy Crockett, a real American hero, he found others that they did similar miniseries with Texas John Slaughter, with Tom Tryon, 9 Lives of Elfego Baca, and Andy Burnett, who was settling the West. All those were real characters.
Yeah. Drumbeat, which we talked about at another time. The Bowie knife and Jim Bowie, that was all tied into that. They took, as you said, these characters and then built imaginatively the story around.
In Drumbeat, that Johnny McKay was a real character. Captain Jack, the Modoc Indian that Charles Bronson played, was a real character. Now, did you ever see the comic book of Drumbeat?
Yes, I did.
And what did you think of it?
Did. It was fun. It's fun, and I was amazed that they would do that. It was sort of, wow.
Well, so many of the films at the time, especially, I guess, the Westerns, had Dell comic books with them on the cover and then artwork inside. And the artwork varied from comic book to comic book. Some of them were really well drawn. I noticed in the Drumbeat that Alan Ladd was bigger and taller and blonder.
Well, of course, they're cartoons.
Nice. So what was it like to read that, though?
It was different than the script, obviously, of course, and which was all I'd known before. I would think, certainly for people who read, the younger people who read comic books and that, it was an introduction to reading.
Yes, I think that's what my mom always said. She said, I learned to read through comic books.
Right.
And I still have my copy of Drumbeat with Alan Ladd and Charles Bronson on the cover.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I know I volunteered as a librarian over many, many years with my children with different schools. And I always felt, doesn't matter what you read, as long as you're reading,
Well, in Wagon Train, with Ward Bond and so many great guest stars coming in week after week, it was different from most Westerns, primetime Westerns at that time, because they did cast movie stars.
Looking back, indeed, they did a lot of, once television, came in, and I sort of was before that, as you know, for a lot of my work. But yes, indeed, the major stars were doing series episodes. In series
It had the major stars and the up-and-comers. I know you did 2 episodes with Robert Vaughn.
Yes.
One time he's a minister.
He was such a good actor.
Yes.
He was wonderful.
He was a good actor.
Yeah. And very dedicated on the set. Not much fun and games.
Oh, no. Not like Barbara Stanwyck, who knew everybody.
No. Not gregarious. Yeah.
Well, let's ask about another party guy that I have heard a lot about, is Ward Bond. What was he like as Major Seth Adams on Wagon Train?
He was lovely. He was very nice to me. Very, fatherly toward me. I was very young then, too. And easygoing, again. And on the set, the nice thing about working on a series and the crew, for the regulars on the show, it was all family, and you were visiting that family while you worked. So, he was interacting with everyone on the crew or whatever. Nobody was new to each other then, except the guest people who came on.
Well, and then because you did so many guests, you were like a long-lost relative.
Yes, and a lot of the same people,
And they had Frank McGrath, who was Wooster, and Terry Wilson, too.
Okay.
That was it. And Robert Horton.
Yeah.
What were they like?
That's right. Yeah, he was the
scout.
The relief, the scout, and he took over for Ward Bond, I think, in one episode.
Well, and that's what happened. I know that they would rotate who was the lead in that different episodes, just like on Maverick, where one week it would be James Garner and another week it would be Jack Kelly.
Right. So that person got to rest a little. Doing a series has to be very, very...
Because back then, they made 39 hour-long episodes a year.
I know. And now, you think, oh, it's a series, and you like it. Then you think,
we have a season of 8.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
No.
what were those days like then? Because they must have had to do a lot of pages.
Busy. Chop, chop, chop. you know.
Long hours?
Very long. Well, not for the at least the actors so much. Long enough, let me tell you, particularly if you were a woman and you had to be there at 5 maybe in the morning to do the hair and the makeup and all of that stuff, and then be on location perhaps to start shooting at 8 o'clock in the morning. Yes, they could be long days.
And then you did another episode of, multiple episodes of Wagon Train 1 when John McIntire had taken over as the wagon master, too.
Yes, after Ward Bond
What was
died.
he like?
He was not as gregarious and outgoing. He was more serious. He was more of an actor than Ward Bond. And I'm saying that only because Ward was so like the character he played. And that's not to take away from the fact that he was acting, but it was definitely, with McIntire, a different approach.
Well, he had played so many different types of roles, a wide variety of villains and heroes, too. And a great radio actor as well. What a voice he had.
No. The voice was important.
Jeanette Nolan, too. Wonderful.
Oh, his wife.
Yes.
Good.
Audrey, thank you for joining us today. I look forward to continuing our conversation on more episodes of A Word on Westerns.
I'm glad to be here again.